Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here to talk about the Round 7 team discussion, Q&As, and also, because it's Thursday night, the ins and outs for every team. And there's a lot to talk about tonight because there's been a lot of carnage this week in the Supercoach world. As always, check us out on all the platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. Also, connect with us via Twitter and Facebook. Our Twitter handle is SupercoachInsider100, or my direct one is Swiz26. We love the feedback, the questions that you guys ask. We're always happy to talk footy in Supercoach. So thank you to everybody out there who continues to support our show, watches us, or just sends us messages. It's fantastic. Thank you to the sponsors that we've now got, Splash Vodka and Earn You. I think there's another one on the way as well that I'm sure Ben will be announcing soon. So, no, it's just fantastic. All the feedback, we just love it. So, it makes us more enjoyable for us doing that when, the community wants to talk it through. And as we said, it's not just us, but all the other Supercoach podcasts and community out there that, all sit there and get together and connect, and a lot of chats and, catch-ups these days. So it's fantastic that just continues to grow, and, hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't so well last week. I've had a good week on a personal note. Had my birthday a couple of days ago, so that was enjoyable. For those who follow me on socials, I went down to Tassie for both games, so that was great to catch up with a couple of mates and Dags and Cootsy, and also saw a friend Claudia down there. So it was a great few days away, and it's always great to sit there and watch footy, and hopefully the AFL continue to do that. The doubleheader in Tassie is definitely a great trip to get on, especially if you like to go with a group of people. Fantastic work. So I usually bag the AFL out for some of their fixturing, and I think we've just had rounds maybe 12 to 15 released just before, and there's some question marks with some of the fixturing there, but no, that was one thing, and the way the Tasmanians did Anzac Day was fantastic. So really, really enjoyed my time there. Unfortunately, a couple of my trade-ins really cost me. So 21.61 this week, which put me down to, another 2,500 down to 9,615. Trading out Raul instead of Horn Francis when I was always going to go Horn Francis this week. Cost me about 40 points there. And bringing in Petrarca, which I was always looking at doing, but it was I was sitting in the car as well, heading up from Hobart to Launceston, still debating Petrarca versus Oliver's big break even. And I even said to one of my mates who put Oliver in, I'm like, he's a big chance of getting his break even tonight, which he pretty well much did. So unfortunately, a couple of the other boys jumped on Oliver, and that helped their ranks. And the other thing that I got caught out was Hayes on the field last week. So well done to everybody who loopholed him. I was trying to be a bit clever and loophole Rochelle. I was thinking Hayes would definitely go a nice sort of 70-80 against GWS. And unfortunately, for the poor guy, the ACL, which will put him out, well done to St Kilda for backing him in for next year, because he definitely deserves another contract. But, for us super coaches, that was really unfortunate for those who had him on field. And then obviously the vice-captain and captain didn't really help those who had gone on Oliver, or the very few that had Mills. Really well done there, because McRae, his first time I think he's ever gone under about 130 in Ballarat, and then Neil, managed to get to about 110, but unfortunately it wasn't as good as he normally does against the Suns. So yeah, it was a bit sad on those sort of fronts. And as I said, well done to people who brought in Oliver or even Colin Mills. I'd actually discussed that with a couple of the guys as I was travelling up, and I know one guy took my advice and put him in, but I was still a little hesitant because of his draw. He had West Coast and North Melbourne the last couple of weeks, and that loss that they had against the Bulldogs, he only went 70, and I thought, well, they've got harder games coming up, but he played fantastic. It's one of the better individual games I've seen in quite a long time. I've seen Gaz Jr., Gaz Senior, Juddy, but Mills, the Hawthorn just put no attention in, and for a guy who only played, I think, 74% of time on ground, that was just an amazing game of footy. All right, so we move on to this week, and I might just go through the ins and outs of all the teams, and then we can talk about what I'm planning to do, because there is a lot of changes. So West Coast has finally brought in Greg Clark, back from injury. He's been killing it in the waffle, was the most disposals in the game last week. Or might have been equal to most disposals, but so he's in. Somebody who I've got sitting in there at the moment, our recommendation is usually wait the couple of games. This kid was not really a kid because his mature age was always going to play round one if it wasn't for injury. So it's sort of the debate between him and Hobbs. I've got the money for Hobbs, but I'm a little worried about it. If there's been some rumours about Parrish this week, if Parrish was out, then I probably will go up to Hobbs. But at the moment, I kind of don't like Hobbs as much, just because after with Merritt coming back earlier than expected, Stringer's back, the role that was looking like could be there for the next 3 or 4 weeks isn't there. So, as much as if the Bombers continue to lose, you expect them to put games into him. But, so I'm tempted to bring Clark in early and loophole him. And with now Ward being named out. So, that's the first big in there. They've also lost Bailey Williams, so they're only going the one ruck, which is their rookie ruck up against both Nank and Soldado this week. So I'll try to pronounce it, Stradenika. I've absolutely butchered that. But so they've also lost Foley, Yo, and Langdon's been dropped. McGovern's back for them, and for the Tigers, we've got Grimes, Soldo, Lambert, Morris, Rioli, Sydney. Stack doesn't change a lot there, and most of the outs, Ross, Parker, Mansell, Tarrant, Dow, and Cochin, probably good for Gibcus. Unfortunately, traded Gibcus instead of Hinge a couple of weeks ago, thinking Hinge was best 22, and Gibcus, with all these ins back for Richmond, might struggle to keep his spot, and then Melbourne go and kick 20 odd behinds, and he received nearly every kick in went to him, and so a beautiful score there. And now with Tarrant out and even Mansell being dropped, Gibcus should still have a nice little role there. I don't think he will score as well. I don't think the ball will be down in the Richmond defence as much this week. But, he's definitely going to make people money. And Thompson Dow being out, which is unfortunate for those who traded him in, because he had some good midfield time, and with Cochin being managed, they definitely would have continued sort of his role, but unfortunately getting injured last week, and I think scoring 11 definitely stunted that cash growth, and it looks like it's going to be a trade now. Geelong Freo, nothing to report really for Geelong, except for Oliver Dempsey continues to keep his spot. They played really well last week. The young fella had a great chance, as I was saying on the other podcast, to have one of the great moments in footy with all his mates behind him to kick his first goal, and unfortunately missed that one. Did get his first goal a bit later on. So Dalhouse is the medical stub, so he's the worry for Dempsey. So I wouldn't be trading Dempsey in this week because there's still some question marks, and Danger's not back either. So I'd just be waiting off on that one. For the Freo Dockers, Sean Darcy's out. That's probably big. Lloyd Meek comes back in. I wouldn't be trading in Lloyd Meek, but Darcy's just one to continue to monitor. For those who are now trading out Grundy, some people might have actually wanted to go Grundy to Darcy, so it's more a case if you're looking at Bruce and Hayes and an upgrade target later on in the season, Darcy could be there because he did look good the other night. But unfortunately, he's back out injured again, which continues to ask questions. Adelaide GWS, Rochelle's still in. They've got a new debutant for GWS. So Bruin's out, and young Jake Stein's out as well. But Cooper Hamilton comes in, which he would be a forward mid in Supercoach. So there'll be somebody we can watch. I guess the big questions there will be around Callaghan, who's named on the interchange bench. Very expensive rookie, looks great. He's going to be a great player for them. A lot of people are kind of looking at him, but the problem with the Giants, they have so many good players in that midfield not performing that well. If you can snap him up in a keeper league, definitely get hold of him. But I just don't know if he's going to be that sort of classic guy. At that price, he's got to start scoring sort of 80s and above. A bit like sort of Helen Francis and Rochelle, you end up getting that 100. It's a hard one to trade Callaghan in at the moment. So for them, the other one, as I said, Rochelle is named in the pocket, and I think that's about it for them. Whitfield's still named on the wing, so it'd be interesting to see how he comes back. Last week he continued to butcher the ball. I think he had about a 30 difference between his dream team and Supercoach, and got 30 of that Supercoach in the last quarter to get him to up to a half reasonable score in the 60s. But obviously he's still struggling, but he's still in. Melbourne Hawthorn. And this is the big game for everyone because the Ds have been hit with COVID. So far we know Petty, Pickett, Jackson and Sparrow are out. This is the much watch because everyone's looking at Gawn, Petrarca and Oliver, especially Oliver because his housemates with, I think it's Luke Jackson, but I did hear Even Bedford was maybe involved as well in that. So, yes, it's going to be a must watch. So if you can hold off on your trades or your premium in until they're playing at 4:30 on Saturday, definitely wait and see there. Because they could still have some more outs. I think Goodwin's not playing. There's a lot of talk because Goodwin and Gawn do hang out a lot, Gawn being captain. So there could be that would be just absolute carnage, especially with Jackson out. Their emergencies so far is Tomlinson, Baker, Chandler, and Mitch Brown. So if it was, I'm not that worried about Gawn because you would think they'd name another backup ruck if that was the case. But yes, that's a must wait and see for that one. Because it's going to be really interesting for the Hawks. Unfortunately, they've managed Ward. He continues to look really good, gets in the right places. Unfortunately, either butchers the ball or just doesn't get on the end of scoring change. So he's going to be a player Hawks fan, so don't be too disappointed with his output. But from a Supercoach point of view, it's a bit frustrating because they're giving him every opportunity. And I thought he would have kept his spot and McDonald would be the one out, but yeah, definitely. They've kept McDonald in, and where have they named McDonald this week? It's on the half-forward flank against Bowie, so that'll be interesting. McDonald continues to like the handball. I don't know if he's going to get on too many chains to kick goals this week, which is unfortunate. But yeah, Ward, that's a bit frustrating for those who especially might have wanted some cover there in case like an Oliver or Petrarca or somebody like that was to pull out. I'd still be holding Ward. And then those who are thinking about trading at McDonald, well, we just can hope he sort of gets a couple of goals and, gets that cash flow going because unfortunately he's sort of stagnant and he hasn't made enough money to cash him out. And then the Hawks, the other big one is in the ruck, Max Lynch up against Gawn style of rucking. Definitely a vice-captain thought. So I've got the vice-captaincy on Gawn at the moment. I'm still tempted a bit by Oliver. But I think Gawn versus Max Lynch, we watched what Laddams did last week. Laddams had an absolute field day, especially in that second half against Lynch as he tied. So I'm kind of backing Gawn in as the guy this week because I just think he's going to monster Lynch by himself. That seems to be the big ones. Finn McGuinness, I know a few people still have him, and Granger Barras, I know a couple of people have messaged me about having him as well. So they're both out. One's managed, and McGuinness is the one dropped. St Kilda Port Adelaide, as we said, Jack Hayes, that was unfortunate. Rowan Marshall also injured, so they've brought back Paddy Ryder from suspension. So Ryder will be up against Hayes, which is good for Sam Hayes owners. As you can see, I've got him already on the bench. Some people have looked at doing Grundy down to him. So I would prefer better cover. And unfortunately, when we get onto the North game, we've lost some of that cover there. But it's definitely, a thought from people if they can put that cash elsewhere. And, Hayes will probably able to sort of average around that 80 mark. We always say with that, with rucks, when they get on the ground, they should able to go 80. So it's not the worst play. It's just sort of how are you going to back up in case Hayes was to injure himself or, I don't think he's going to get dropped, but yeah, if he was to miss a week for whatever reason, how are you going to cover that? So I'm a little bit more keen on the whole Bruce Hayes R2, R3 at the moment because there doesn't seem to be too many other options. A few have looked at Witts and he's travelling on really well and obviously playing a Collingwood team without Grundy this week. So yeah, but I'm a bit disappointed because those who followed me from the start, I had him in my team and I sort of made that last minute trade, but at least that was because bringing in Gawn, which has sort of worked out, but I would have loved to have Witt still in there. But yeah, for St Kilda Port Adelaide, not many other changes. Looks like there's no mention of Mead in there. Wing Hayden continues to keep his spot. But yeah, I think it's more everything's as expected for that game. So yeah, nothing else to report there. Carlton North, the Mackays continue not to play against each other. I think it's 7 times now. I put to the boys the other day what happens first. Essendon wins a final, the Mackays play against each other. So that'll be interesting with Ben McCabe was suspended. They've brought back Coleman Jones, but the big one is Cherry Foot, 4 weeks, must trade. He was looking like he still had a bit of cash to make, as awful as he was last week. Like dropped 2 absolute sitter intercept marks. And I get it. Footy's a hard game, and we always sit there and go, my grandma could catch that, but God, tell you what, a couple of those drop marks were absolutely terrible for a professional footballer. So Bonner, Coleman, Jones, Stephenson come in for our two, Ben McKay, Ford, and Cherry. And the Blues, Silvani, Stocker, O'Brien, and Kennedy are back for Boyd, Parks, Pitternet, Cottrell, and Setterfield. Those who held on to Cripps, fantastic. Should go fantastic again this week. If you are looking at Walsh, the big news out of this was the rumours about Hewitt today. Apparently limped off at training, so that's another must-watch. Could be absolutely carnage for our back line. So I'm sure we'll get more news about that tomorrow. We all hope that he plays. But yeah, that could be a late-out scenario. The Blues got Setterfield, Carroll, Plowman, and Cottrell as their emergencies. So you would think if Hewitt was to pull out, Setterfield comes in and probably Cottrell goes to the sub. So that could be absolute devastation here. 1:10 Sunday, we've got the Pies versus the Suns. Out goes Brodie Grundy and also Kruger, the backup ruck. So yeah, that's huge. Ins Begg, Cox, Henry, Bianco, and Brown. And the Suns out Corbett and Powell for McPherson, Lukosius, Farah, Roses, and Atkins. Now, Roses is on an extended bench, currently 7th on that bench. So that'll have to be wait until a finalise of teams tomorrow. So everyone's wanting to hopefully trade him in. It could be a situation where they name him sub, which would be the worst case scenario for us. You'd rather him just not be named at all. But yeah, we'll have to see because Atkins, Burgess, Davis, Ferrarini, McPherson, Markov, Roses, and Sharp all on that bench. You would expect, especially probably Atkins, McPherson, Ferrarini probably get the nod, and then it'd be interesting to see which way they go there. And then for the Pies, they've got Myercheck currently named in the ruck, not Cox. So if that was the case, Myercheck maybe in a draft league, if he hasn't been picked up, maybe go after him. I'm not as bullish about Cox. I think Cameron should still be in that. So, yeah, Darcy Cameron. So, Darcy Cameron's the other one, ruck forward. A few have asked me about him in Classic. I don't like that as much. But, yeah, try to go get him in your draft leagues this week. I think he's just a forward butt. So, he's not covering one of your ruck outs. But, yeah, should still score pretty well. So that'd be interesting. Pendles is named in the midfield. I really would love to get Pendles into my defence. The only problem is Clary, and that was probably the issue of getting Petrarca last week. It sort of stuffed me around a little bit because I would have loved to look at Pendles or Luke Parker this week. And if Clary was to be a late out, I'd definitely be looking at Pendles as an option, especially with our backlines. There was a little rumour floating around about Dacos being an out, but he's still named, so just watch that just in case. As I said, absolute could be carnage this week, but so far not so bad. Doggies versus the Bombers. We've got Crozier, Sweet, Vandermeer, Wallace, and Rook Smith in for Scott and Ugle Hagen, and the Bombers are unchanged with Brian Cutler and Reed joining the squad this week, which means Hobbs is named in the forward pocket. As I said, the issue is with Parrish, Stringer, and Merritt playing in that midfield. That's his role kind of gone at the moment. And it'll be interesting because the Bombers Shield, Zug Thatcher, Caldwell, Baldwin, Hind, Cutler all on that bench. Zach Reed's that bench kind of looking at is that centre half back, so might want to get games into him soon. And then the Dogs, they've actually named Bont in the guts this week, so that'll be the interesting one. And the boys and I talked about that the other night about how the Bulldogs are going to set up if they were to lose any more games and Bont was playing forward. They'll just have to make that change. As good as their side looks better with Libba in the midfield and Bont up forward, because if Libba went forward, he's just no good. He's proven before that he is a pure midfielder, where Bont in the midfield is obviously a better midfielder, but then it's sort of, the whole Rob Peter to Pate Paul situation. So it'd be interesting to see sort of the Dogs continue to do around that. And where have they actually named Libba this week? Libba, up in the forward pocket. Yeah, I just can't see that happening. And that they want him around the ball. Like the Bulldogs forward line this week's got Bailey, Smith, Dunkley, and Libba named on it. I just don't see that eventuating. And probably the big game, 4:40, Sydney versus Brisbane. I'm actually really looking forward to this game. Sinclair, Still Stevens, Sam Reid, Papley, and Will Gould is named, but on an extended bench. He actually exists. So come on, horse, look after us, start getting this guy some games. And the Lions, Loman, unfortunately out injured with Dev Robb, James Madden, Cockatoo, and Fullerton on the extended squad. Looking at extended bench, nothing really changes that it affects us for the Lions. For the Swannies, extended bench, Goulden, Kennedy, Rowbottom, Papley, Gould with Sinclair there as well. So they've still got Laddams named starting ruck, which is good. I just don't know about him as an option. Like, he scored fantastic last week. Sinclair obviously coming into that squad, and then Hickey's about 3 or 4 weeks away. You know, it could be a good short-term option, but long-term for the season, no thanks for me. And Parker's currently named at half forward. Mills looks so good in the midfield. They've actually named Heaney in the midfield. He was getting actually down the back line quite a bit last week, taking a few intercept marks, getting himself involved in the game. Unfortunately, with Paddy McCartan, the one out injured, I'd be holding at least for a week. Let's see how Paddy comes up. We all wish Paddy the best, because he's obviously had a lot of issues with his concussions over the time, and he's got the ability to take intercept marks. If he plays that whole game out last week, he probably scores 70, 80. So I think he's worth holding on for now, and especially with a lot of the other carnage. I'd probably would be looking, obviously your Grundys, Cherries, they're the ones first off that you'd be trading. I've still got Horn Francis and Rochelle there. If you're in that position where you haven't been hurt by any of this carnage, you'd be looking to move those guys on as well for sure. And that's where, I've a bit of a decision around the boost, but I probably won't use it and just suck it up for 1 week, and hopefully they don't lose too much cash. Q&As. So what have we got this week? We've got Brad, thoughts on LMAC as a cheap D6. Only one bad score, takes kickouts. Yeah, now it's not a bad call. He's not setting the world on fire as much as we kind of thought. It definitely was a few people I think started with him, or kind of especially were looking at him when Hall went down, and Zeebel's been playing forward, and you'd think with that ball spending so much time down in the North Melbourne backline, obviously he's picked up defender status. He got the 102 last week. So, yeah, he was actually around the ball and doing everything. He probably deserved a lot more. North just don't seem to score, but yeah, he's had scores of 140, 101, 102 so far, but he's also had 88, 28 and 76. But I don't mind him as an option. For 400,000 as a D6, break even this week of 56, you could do a lot worse. So I don't mind it, but just always the issue, like North Melbourne just don't seem to get a lot of that pie. But yeah, I think he could definitely average 95, 100. It's not going to be top 6 score, but I think for value for money and with the way all the injuries are going, you could do worse than him. Like, he's averaging 89 at the moment, but you take out that 28, it's not so bad. Marcus, do you think Abdul has the biggest head in the Richmond group? Absolutely. Carl, I traded out Cripps when he got injured chasing points and now desperately want him back. Do I go this week against North with a break even of 125, or do I wait 1 more week and get the bottomed out Luke Parker? Yeah, it's a problem because I was the same. I traded out Cripps thinking, well, why would there be a 1 week hamstring? Came back and God, he looked so good again. My little worry about him is if he could go off of such a minor hamstring against the Suns and then miss a week for that, who's to say he can't do that again? So I'm kind of holding off. I know, yeah, he should score pretty well against North, but they've still got those good midfielders in Walsh, and hopefully Hewitt plays, Chera. So I think it could be a bit of a situation, a bit like the Geelong game last week, where the points were more shared around. Who was the highest point getter for the Geelong? It's funny, when you're at the game, you kind of don't sometimes follow the Supercoach points as closely as you do. But yeah, Jeremy Cameron with 131, and he kicked 7, should have kicked 10. Tui 130. Their midfielders, they were all around that 90, 100 mark, but they didn't blow the game out of water. So it could be a bit of the situation again this week where Cripps, he probably plays well, maybe gets 120, 130 at best, but I think it'll be more of an even spread. So yeah, Luke Parker, if you need a forward, definitely a great option, even if you want to bring him in the midfield this week. And that's why I kind of really was hoping Clary would be out with COVID, misses a week. Or if I just didn't get Petrarca, I would have been getting Parker for sure, back around that ball. Swans look so good. Big games coming up, which I think they need him around the ball. So, yeah, no, that's an absolute brilliant question there. Who else? A few people have sent me messages on the old Facebook. So, Paney, really good cricketer. This guy actually same club as mine, and a couple of people actually stirring me up that week, last week, and especially in Launceston, got a bit of crap in the pubs for wearing the shirt that I've got on at the moment, my jumper. It's not a Carlton jumper; it is my cricket club jumper. We actually start back with winter cricket this week. Believe it or not, they play winter. They play cricket in the middle of winter, about 200 clubs. So for any of those cricketers out there that listen and wanting a game, yeah, absolutely, track me down and send me a message, and yeah. But and surprisingly enough, that's usually the question we get. We don't get washed out that much in winter. We've probably been washed out a lot more in summer than we have winter. So yeah, believe it or not, that isn't actually a thing. So he said to me, Paney, have 285 in the bank. Thinking of upgrading Berry. Can have anyone. First choice is Mills. Is he on top of his Achilles? Brayshaw, Keys, Walsh. Other options. Or get Pendles moving back. Or will Bont stay forward and get Libber? Now, Paney's in a great position where he's got McRae, Steele, Neal, Oliver, Miller, Green, Cripps all in his midfield, and he's looking maybe as an M8. I think Berry's still playing a role. We haven't seen him go that big game yet, and he continues to get some really good scores to half-time and kind of fades out. And I think they've got a couple real, he's still good against the Suns the other day with his 84. Big against the Swans this week, probably a tougher game. But then it plays West Coast and Adelaide the 2 weeks after that. So I'm really tempted to keep Berry. Hopefully, against, say, maybe West Coast, they get up early, sort of Neal lines, sort of rest more, and then Berry does a bit more of the line share in there, and hopefully can pop off like 100, or maybe one of those big scores that he scored in the past. So to answer you, Paney, yeah, maybe look at your sort of Pendles this week. Libber, not as much. I'd probably prefer Parker, but he's still an option. There's just so many good forward options at the moment. So it's not sort of like, unless you're desperate for one, don't need to go chasing one of those options. But yeah, maybe Parker just because he's break even this week. But I really like the Pendles call. He's the guy I'm tracking from my D6, playing around the ball. Even when he drops down half pack, he still scores. And the Pies actually playing some good footy at the moment. So might be even a good week this week against the Suns and that. Like, he can definitely score very well again. So that's the one. But out of those midfield choices, yeah, Mills, a lot of people, you nearly have missed the boat on him. If you're going to get him, you probably have to get him this week. But they've got tougher games coming up for the Swannies. They do have quite a few at home. Just trying to get this Swans draw up here at the moment. But yeah, obviously the Lions is going to be a tough game. And the thing is, they've been sort of pushed, they got pushed by Hawthorn for, I think it was 12 minutes left in the game. Moore kicked the ball into the forward pocket, and ball went out, and at the point they led by 8 points. And then the Swans were brilliant after that. It was some of the best footy I've seen in a long time. But the Hawks actually controlled that game for 3.5 quarters. North Melbourne, they controlled it for 3.5 quarters against the Swans. So yeah, they're winning. But it'll be interesting to see how they come up. They got the Lions this week. Then they play the Suns and the Bombers. But then, the Blues and the Demons in there, even the Saints. So there's some interesting games coming up for the Swannies. So, it'd be interesting to see how Mills sort of goes up against those bigger games, because he's been absolutely tearing the weaker teams. And the other options were Brayshaw doing really well. He's averaging well, but he's still had those sort of 90 games when he's been tagged. So he's improved his ability to work through the tag, but it's a hard one because he gets so much attention, and because Fife's not there, everyone still sort of tries to shut him down. So be interesting to see how he goes against the Cats. Keys is doing really well. I sort of compare Keys to Jared Lyons. Just coming in, racks up the ball, is going to get no attention. With Sloan out, him and Laird are just working so well together, and look good, so I don't mind that one. Walsh, I'm a big fan of Walsh as well. And other options, Zachy Merritt is the one to watch. Comes back 4 weeks early from injury and pumps out 123. Fantastic person to have in your team. He's always around that top 8 mark. So he's the one that I'll be watching, and possibly that one you want to upgrade around the buys. Just having a look at that buy fixture to see if that could work out, because Brisbane, I think Brisbane actually might have the last buy. They do. The Brisbane have the round 14 buy, and the Bombers are round 12. So, yeah, you could definitely round 13 go Berry to Zach Merritt is a definite option, or you could even go Berry to sort of a Walsh at that stage. Steele, if for whatever reason you hadn't got him at that point, or even those round 13 guys, you got the Crows there with Keys, Laird, and the Bulldogs, and those who don't have Took. So there's plenty of options there. So yeah, in a perfect world, if you can keep Berry to the buys, that would be an option, and maybe move somebody else on. And then a few people messaged me on Twitter to Mark Kenner. What has he said here? Value options. Oh, what's he talking about here? Nankervis, next seven opponents. So he's got West Coast, Cameron. He's got the Hawks. He's got the Bombers, Laddams, Hayes, DeConnie. Actually, he does have some really good opponents. The problem with Big Nank is, he actually copped a little bit about his leadership this week. He's kind of that real bash and crash ruckman. He's not one that I'm looking at. He's going to get the kick big goals and take big interception marks and be that 120 guy. And that I think there was a bit of talk about Draper this week. He would have been a really good ruckman in the 80s. I think Nank's in that same mould. He kind of really wants to wrestle, and he's sort of that sort of leader who, because of his physicality, I think it's the best way to put it, out there, show big moments like that, not more like Gawn, who's going to, kick you a big goal or take a big intercept mark. But it's not a terrible option. What's Nank price there? $4.65, but I still prefer those cheaper ones. So it's a bit of a pot. It's more one, I think, for your drafts, but I don't think anyone's giving Nank up, and I don't think he's going to be there. The other issue is Soldo returning, so yeah, I'm not too sure about that. You'd kind of, with Jackson there out, I think if you don't have Gawn, mate, you're probably going Gawn, or maybe pay up for Bruce. I think Supercoach Mama was talking about this. She didn't get Bruce in, and definitely thinking about paying the extra $80K to get it. So yeah, to Supercoach Mama out there, definitely that's probably one to look at. I'm just having a look, because I know a few other people sent me some stuff on Twitter this week, and I want to make sure I get their questions as well. What's this one? Supercoach. I think that's the Break Evens podcast. Yeah, definitely check them out. Grundy to Wits and $400K for double upgrade next week, or Grundy to Gawn and 190 with one upgrade. Yeah, Wits is going really well. Obviously playing a Collingwood team without Grundy, so should continue to score. And yeah, the extra cash, that's all we'll say. If you can use that extra cash, it's always a good thing, especially if you're upgrading one of those rookies to a midfield. But this is an opportunity to go and get Gawn. Gawn playing the Hawks, no ruck. I think it's West Coast in 2 weeks with no ruck. So yeah, if you don't have Gawn, because as much as like his break even's 129, I think he breaks out, gets close enough. He has the Hawks this week, Saints, which will be just rider by himself, West Coast the following week, even with Jackson back, and then North, and who knows what they're going to be doing with their rucks by then. It'll probably still be Goldie, but Goldie is as good as he's been, is getting on these days, and it might be Coleman Jones playing in there, and then Freo after that. I'm not even that worried about Fremantle at the moment with Darcy in and out. They've also that annual match against the Pies. He's going to be obviously against Cameron, so I think you've got to get on Gawn. To Anders, who to trade this week? Cripps for value. I haven't had him, or Oliver before I miss out. Yeah, Oliver, mate. And that, as good as Cripps is, that the break even, this is your chance to get Oliver. The only thing that changes that, if he was to be out for COVID, so watch that. To Calza, good Bombers man. Clary or Steele. Steele not ideal for my buy structure. You go get Clary. Steele's got the first buy. If you can hold on, and that's what we're talking about, Berry or someone like that, keep them and then get Steele after he has that first buy. To Shane Doig, really good off spinner to Doigie, I know that. Good cricket man. Gawn and Oliver, or Cripps and Oliver this week. Go and get Gawn and Oliver, mate. And that's no disrespect to Cripps. I think it's still a great pick. And a lot of people looking in from cheaper. I guess it just comes down to, if, for example, if you're going to use a boost and you could do something extra with that money, you might have to get a Parker or a Pendles in, then that would be a different story. But yeah, I think Gawn and Oliver, you want these Melbourne players. They don't look like losing a game at the moment. That they've sort of been playing in second, third gear. Even against the Tigers the other night, yeah, they won by 22. They probably should have beat us by 10 to 15 goals. They missed that many opportunities. So, yeah, get the Ds. To Corey, who I think is a Northman. Yes, he is. What trade option is better, Grundy, Hayes, and Dacos to Parker, Keys, and Hayes, or Cherry, Hayes, and Grundy to Treloar, Cripps, and Hayes? Well, I'd be keeping Dacos. I think a lot of people are going to be trying to keep Dacos as much of the season as possible. So I'd try to keep him. So Parker, Keys, and Hayes, so I don't mind that. Or Cherry, Hayes, and Grundy to Treloar, Cripps, and Hayes. I'd probably prefer that. Even if you could get Parker instead of Treloar. So if you could go Parker, Cripps, and Sam Hayes, I like that one better for Cherry, Hayes, and Grundy. Sam Hayes is going to be good backup as R3. Obviously, Cripps is still a really good player. He's going to continue to score well and got a big chance to still be top 8. And I like Parker over Treloar. Not to say Treloar's a bad pick, but I'd prefer that if that's what I had to go with. Really interesting week, especially with the out of Grundy and Hayes, and that was looking like the ones. And then Cherries, we all had all these rucks, and now it looks like we've got no rucks. Tim English, obviously, last week, still another 3 to 4 weeks away. So it's really thrown a real spanner in the works. Unfortunately for a few of us, and I know I'm not alone here, because you could see on Twitter a few people put up that every trade we seem to make, it actually gets us a lower score. But well done to a lot of the people who've jumped on those mid prices, Gresham and Green. Bowie continues to score well, so it has been sort of the great year for mid prices, and kind of a bit annoyed that I haven't jumped on more of them. But with the extra trades and people being aggressive, a lot of people got their teams pretty well set up, or will have their team set up around the buys. So yeah, there is a point where trades are important, because there is a lot of outs, and COVID's going to continue to hit worse, so you don't want to be burning all your trades. But at the same time, a lot of people are setting up their teams. Some of those value options, if B. Parker or McDonald, Cripps, if that can save you some coin, and that allows you to bring in another guy earlier, well, that's not a bad move either. And just to look at those rookies, Dempsey, Curtis playing their second game this week. I thought Curtis played pretty well, so keep an eye on him more than probably Dempsey, just because it's easier to keep your spot in North Melbourne than it is Geelong. Hayes this week, this is your chance to get him. Clark coming in is important, and we just hope Will Gould can be the saviour and come in at some and make an impact. But I wouldn't hold our breath on that. Longmire said something, I think, was it about Rampy, or there was another player he was mentioning. It took 4 or 5 years for him to break in, so I think that's what they're sort of thinking around Gould. So it should be interesting. There's a lot of vice captain options this week. Round 7. So what do we got there? I guess if you've got sort of a Keys type, you could look at him against the Giants. But yeah, the Melbourne Hawks game is where everyone's at. So Oliver and Gawn, the definite 2 there. Steele against Port's not a bad shout. Cripps against North. And then we've got McRae playing the Bombers on the Sunday as sort of the backup. And if you've got Paddy McCartan, that's another good reason to hold him, because he's got the last game. So it really means you can VC anybody and make him the captain if need be, but just make sure you've got it set up. So you might have a De Conning, for example, there as the emergency, or whoever your D6 is as the emergency, and then have McCartan sitting there on field, because that's not going to affect you. And just, swing the captaincy on McCartan if your VC goes off. But outside of that, that hopefully covers everything. Keep, shooting out some messages, and we'll try to answer them. And hopefully we, fingers crossed, we don't get much more carnage tomorrow. And we move into round 7, and I think we're about 5 weeks out from the bye. So continue to set up those teams, guys. Have a look at those bye structures. And that's another important thing. I should have not left as late as I for this moment, but when you're thinking about bringing in those players, it's important to kind of have a look at your buys as well. You don't want to obviously having, unless you're a league player, having sort of 4, 5, 6 guys on one line who have all got the same bye. But I guess if you're playing leagues, it doesn't matter. You just take the loss that week if that's how your league is set up. But yeah, wish everybody good luck this week and happy super coaching, and we'll see you soon.